Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, all the front pages in the press preview. A first look at those front pages as they come. First, though, let's bring you up to date with our top stories. Sir Keir Starmer has acknowledged he'll have to make tough decisions if he becomes Prime Minister, while Rishi Sunak said he's not given up hope as party leaders continue campaigning in the run-up to polling day. Donald Trump has welcomed a US Supreme Court ruling, which means he could be partially immune from prosecution for his actions while president. And the far right could be on the brink of government in France for the first time since the Second World War, after Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party won the first round of the vote. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the Sun's chief political correspondent, Jack Elsom, and the New Statesman's associate political editor, Rachel Cunliffe. Welcome to both of you. So, full look at the front pages then, starting with the Financial Times. It leads with the US Supreme Court ruling that Donald Trump has broad immunity from criminal prosecution for acts committed while in office. A big majority will be best for Britain. The Times headlines Keir Starmer's words as he appeals to voters to hand him a strong mandate so he can deliver difficult changes for the country. The Eye reports on the Labour leader saying he would work with any government in Europe, including Marine Le Pen's, as both are leading in the polls. Give our children hope. The Mirror quotes the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown as he urges voters to back Labour to end child poverty. The Guardian writes about Labour's green pledges as Ed Miliband promises that the party would put climate front and centre if they get in government. Kemi Badenoch's warning is on the front of the Express as she says voting reform could wipe out hundreds of Tory MPs for what she describes as a few inexperienced reform candidates. Britain's forces not ready for conflict of any scale, a warning from a former Ministry of Defence chief making the front of the Daily Mail as they push defence back into the political spotlight. The Telegraph focuses on the Postal Minister criticising Royal Mail for failing to deliver votes in time for the general election. The Metro says a British combat medic who saved more than 200 soldiers in Ukraine has died on the front line. The Sun pictures Jude Bellingham at last night's game and writes that he could get banned from the Euros following a gesture he made after winning against Slovakia. Same story is also on the front page of the Star, as you can see, their headline. Don't get a reminder by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme. You can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you listen to our guests. So we're joined by Jack Elsom and Rachel Cunliffe. Sure, we'll get to that gesture and that goal a little bit later on. In the meantime, politics. It's all over the front page, isn't it? It's a funny old week, isn't it, the last few days? The Times, Starmer, a big majority will be best for Britain. You know, what's his argument here, Jack?
Well, for the past few weeks, if the polls are to be believed, it's pretty certain that Keir Starmer will walk in the front door of number 10 on Friday. The only question is by how many seats will that majority be? And Rishi Sunak seems to have a strategy now of trying to spook voters into saying, do not give Keir Starmer the supermajority he craves to rig the system, rip up the rule book, change the constitution. Keir Starmer is actually leaning into that in this interview with The Times out tomorrow, in which he says, yes, actually, I do want a big majority because that will allow me to bring about the change, which I think this country desperately needs. And if you look at where Starmer has been going to in the recent days of this campaign, we've got 72 hours left, just a bit less, actually, of this election. I mean, today he's been going around places like Hertfordshire, places like Buckinghamshire. He went to Banbury, where I think Victoria Atkins has a 16,000 majority. You know, he is eyeing a massive sweep of previously Tory voting seats. And he's clearly on the path to that at the moment. You know, there's a big tussle over supermajority, whether that cuts through with voters and how they reward parties based on that argument. It's going to be seen in a couple of days' time. Yes,
over the weekend, leaning into the idea of building on the green belt, which is seen as off-putting to the Shire-type voter, now leaning into the idea of a supermajority being a good thing. Is that a sign of confidence, do you think, in the Labour leadership?
I think it's interesting that he's doing this as an interview in the Times, which is obviously a paper that he's been courting, and the Sunday Times gave Labour their sort of endorsement over the weekend. I find all of this talk about supermajorities really quite strange. We don't have supermajorities in this country. Getting a large majority doesn't give you any advantages in terms of getting legislation through the House of Lords. It doesn't give you any advantages in terms of arguing in the courts that your legislation is the right thing to do. It's an idea imported from other democratic systems into the UK, and I don't remember any Conservatives getting het up about supermajorities when Boris Johnson was using his 2019 landslide to, shall we say, change some of the rules.
But sorry, does 80 count as a supermajority?
Nothing counts as a supermajority,
here,
but it doesn't matter. A majority of 1 and a majority of 200.
Well, you tell that to Theresa May when you lost her majority. And
well, exactly. The difference between a majority of 1 and a majority of -1 is huge, and is actually bigger than the difference between a majority of 1 and 100. It's not a concept that makes any sense in British politics. Nonetheless, the Conservatives have put this idea at the heart of their campaigning. Don't give Labour unchecked power, and Starmer's, leading into it because I think perhaps he's worked out that there are, I think, maybe 14 seats that are completely safe Conservative ones, if you believe all the various MRP polls that we've had recently. So, he's having a lot of fun with it, but it's still a completely and utterly meaningless term.
Yeah, I mean, so we go back to It's a Funny Old Week and how you get your voters or the slightly undecideds to stick with you. Go to the Daily Express then. Kemi Badenoch, suggesting you risk losing hundreds of Tory MPs. For what, basically? What's the point of losing them is the point she's making here.
Yes, and this is a direct challenge to voters who are flirting with Nigel Farage's Reform Party. And this has been the real challenge, I think, which Sunak has completely failed to neutralise, not just during the campaign, but in the weeks ahead of that campaign too. Because you have many voters now who are disillusioned with the Tory party and are in position to give them a kicking. You now see Sunak pivot to a strategy where he is trying to remind voters that this is not the opportunity to do that. It ties into the supermajority. All you are going to do is give Keir Starmer untrammelled power to do what he wants with number 10. And the idea that that Reform are going to get more than a clutch of seats is something which he is now buying into, because at the moment, Nigel Farage making a very good case, appealing to the sort of Tory G-spot, immigration, lower taxes, but it's not something which a lot of voters, when they get into the booth and they have a prime ministerial option of Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak, are going to be able to contend with. And I think that he is now saying, this is not a by-election. This is not the time to vent your frustration in the hope that we are going to change course. It is a general election. Only 2 people can walk into that front door at number 10. And Kemi Badenoch making the point in the Express tomorrow that you have to vote Conservative if you want these kind of policies, and that's going to be the message going forward in the final 48 hours.
Yeah, and very strong messages from people like the Progressive Alliance and others about tactical voting, where to put your vote if you want to give the Tories a kicking, as you put it. So the double T's, turnout and tactical voting, are really critical, aren't they, come Thursday? What sort of impact might they have, do you think, on how the results play out?
Well, if you look at all the huge range of polls that we've had, they all suggest Labour going into government with a sizable majority, but there's a huge range for the number of seats the Conservatives could have. It's from around 50 to 150. That's the difference between a party having a really bad night and the party in existential crisis that it can't come back from. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this warning about people who might be wavering voting for Reform comes from Kemi Badenoch, who is expected to put her hat in the ring for the leadership after this election, and is going to, want to signal to Reform voters, right-leaning Conservative voters, that she understands their frustration, and 2, she wants there to be a sizable party left for her to lead afterwards.
And meantime, the benefits and downsides of a July election, 1, Ed Davey gets to play outside. 2, people are on holiday, which takes us to the postal voting issue. The Daily Telegraph suggesting there's chaos. Certainly people in Scotland have been complaining strongly about this because obviously their dates are different, aren't they? But what's the Telegraph saying here?
Yeah, it's actually pretty extraordinary. A massive cock-up by the Royal Mail essentially means that many people haven't had their postal ballots delivered. And because of holiday season, many families would have gone abroad already, and so they haven't received their postal ballots, basically shut out of democracy here. And so the Telegraph has calculated that they think there's 90 constituencies in the UK which have been directly affected by this, including ones where certain cabinet ministers are hanging on by their fingernails. So they are now complaining. But it is a really serious issue, and so I think that the Royal Mail is now scrambling to try and right that wrong. And the Postal Minister, Kevin Hollerake, today has given them a bit of a kick up the backside on this.
So should people apply for postal voting earlier? Should that be a greater lead-in? Should the deadline be earlier by which you have to put your postal... I mean, are there systemic changes that could happen to make this, that could correct this for the future?
Well, potentially, although, people make plans at the last minute, don't they? And so you would like to think that, a well-oiled machine which gets a lot of money like the Royal Mail would be able to organise something like this. I mean, obviously, postal voting has completely surged in popularity over the past few years. I think it's something like a quarter of people now registered by postal vote, whereas only a few percentage even a few years ago. And so this is a really important aspect now of elections, and you'd hope that in the future, even if not this time, these wrongs can be corrected.
And how it plays out in those constituencies depends on who is most likely to use a postal vote.
And often it is older voters who register for them who tend to vote Tory, which is why you're getting more of the Conservative heavyweights who are sort of quite upset about this. I think a couple of things happened this time round. One was it was a shock to everyone, this election. Postal votes are handled by local councils who need to register people and check and verify everything, and that's taken time. And just because it happened at the start of the summer holidays in Scotland, and for many people, you've got higher demand for it as well.
And Rachel, why don't you also pick up on the Telegraph story, just in front there. I may not work after 6, as PM suggests Starmer. He's talking about Fridays. It's widely reported that it was every day, which sounded lovely for everybody, didn't it? But anyway, it's a lot of criticism for this.
Keir Starmer, shock horror, has said that on a Friday evening, he likes to carve out some time to spend with his family, with his children, and that he thinks being, on 24/7 isn't good for leadership, and that it doesn't make you a better decision maker, and that possibly one night a week he likes to spend time with his kids. And everyone has suddenly gone into sort of overdrive, saying that he's a slacker, he's lazy. I think one of the papers is calling him so sleepy. There are many criticisms that you can make of Keir Starmer. I don't think the one about him being lazy really fits. And the fact that this is being made by a number of people in the political world who were very happy with Boris Johnson's work ethic, I think is a tiny, tiny bit of a double standard. But it seems to be backfiring on those who are making this criticism, partly because it's deranged, and partly because one of the reasons that Keir Starmer likes to take time with his family on Friday evenings is because his wife's family are Jewish, and he wants to introduce their children to the Jewish faith. And I think possibly that criticism is going to end up backfiring.
OK, interesting. Quick 30 seconds on the inside page of The Sun, if you don't mind, because I'm overrunning. The stunts that we've seen, if you like.
Ed Davey out and about today, bungee jumping, supposedly announcing some policy
that
on
is a photo, though,
bereavement.
I mean, that is the photo of the campaign.
It is a fantastic photo. My worry is that Ed Davey has basically been doing all these stunts and he's been getting fantastic coverage, although the coverage he's been getting is things like that, or it's him in a pair of tight swimming trunks or a rash vest, or getting wet on a paddleboard, or going down a slide. He's clearly having fantastic fun. He is going to get a lot of seats in this election. And I think that now he needs to put on a suit, do up a tie. I'm not going to say sing the national anthem, as someone famously once said, but I think he needs to have a bit more element of seriousness about him. He's got some serious policies, and I think that needs to put that across in a more measured way going forward.
Well, it's been that and social care that people will remember him for, I think, probably in this, which is, this and social care being a very serious issue for a lot of people. But yes, as you say, fantastic photo.
I love it. I'm 100% pro Ed Davey stunts. He looks like he's having fun, which is more than any of the rest of us.
We just wanted to carry on after the election as well, don't we?
No,
maybe weekly.
Absolutely, we don't.
Anyway, lots more still to come in the next part of our programme. Was Jude too rude? Back in a moment.
There was certainly a feel-good factor and spectacle. I felt, there have been glowing reviews all round today, but I felt in the crowd that it had a very saggy middle. I mean, we all get to that point in middle age anyway, don't we? But it did. It got lost, and underneath all the spectacle and the guest stars and the strange cover versions of their own songs, and also new and obscure tracks, it all got a bit lost in the middle. They recovered at the end with Fix You, an amazing sing-along, and then they finished on a new single. I don't know who finishes on the new single. No one does that. And Coldplay should be long enough in the tooth to know to finish on a big one like Shiver, for instance. Yeah, it was really moving because the story is that Coldplay were inspired to form a band when they watched Back to the Future, and he got on stage and played Johnny Be Good in the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, I think it was called, in Back to the Future. And Coldplay were inspired to form a band from that. So it was a really special moment for them to bring out their hero, and it was really moving on sight as well, because it's an iconic film for so many people, including me, and to see him there playing the guitar and obviously enjoying it and being in awe of the crowd was special. And Michael Leavis straight afterwards as well.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolution. It's our job to try to make sense of it all.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, Jack Elsom and Rachel Cunliffe. Welcome back to both of you. Let's go to the news about Donald Trump, the Supreme Court ruling about his immunity from prosecution on certain issues. FT picking up on this. How seriously is the FT taking this story then?
Pretty seriously. I mean, they've quoted one of the justices' dissenting opinion in it, arguing that there's a fear for democracy. It makes a mockery of the principle, the foundation of our system of government, that no man is above the law. Because essentially what this ruling says is that a president can't be prosecuted for official acts to be defined at a later point. I mean, it's hugely broad, it's hugely sweeping. And with regards to the court case that Trump is facing about his role in inciting the January the 6th Capitol riots, it essentially says that if he talked to the Attorney General about not recognising the results, then he can't be prosecuted for that. If he talked to Mike Pence about, obstructing the transfer of power, maybe he can't be prosecuted for that either. So it's pretty seismic.
And the point about this is it reminds us again that America is politicised at every level, including the judiciary and law. And this is what happens, when politics takes control of organisations.
Yeah, and people often complain about the state of our politics and our institutions, but what we don't have is a politically biased judiciary, something that Americans have grappled with for a long time. And both parties down the years have become a cropper to a stacked, in certain way, court. It just so happens that the court at the moment is incredibly stacked towards the Conservatives. Do not underestimate how angry Democrats are at this ruling. One, because obviously it probably kicks this legal battle until after the election. But obviously it comes off the back of a pretty dismal time at the moment for Joe Biden, and he needed some crucial wins under his belt. And you can only really spin this as a win for Donald Trump. In fact, that's exactly what he's doing, chalking it up today as a win for our Constitution and democracy, proud to be an American. He blasted on his Truth Social earlier. He's obviously absolutely chipper tonight, and you'd have to think that Joe Biden, it's another blow for him and his re-election campaign.
30 seconds on The Sun and the Daily Star. Was Jude too lewd? UEFA is investigating.
I'm going to hand this over to
Oh, I
Jack.
did.
Do you know, off air, Rachel actually admitted that she had no idea who Jude Bellingham was.
Really?
She's been living under a rock.
I've been living in election world. It's not to do with the election.
I'll take it on. Jude Bellingham, England wonder kid, scored that sensational bicycle kick in extra time yesterday, put us through to the quarter-finals. Well, when he celebrated that goal, he did quite a lewd hand gesture on screen now. He is saying it was an in-joke with friends in the crowd. However, UEFA are now investigating because they think it might be a certain slight at Slovakia. If he ends up being found guilty of this, he could miss that crucial game against Switzerland on Saturday. Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
And this would be bad.
It's a big incredibly
That would be bad, OK.
Rachel. We're going to make her watch it.
Yes.
Jack Elsom and Rachel Cunliffe, thank you both very much indeed. See you for more in the 11. You can mug up a bit more on Jude Bellingham. Here is the weather, though, now. So the next few days will be cool, rather cloudy and quite changeable, but there will be some dry and sunny spells. A mostly fine start tomorrow, though, with chilly out of town. North West Scotland can expect a few showers. Lincolnshire, East Anglia look rather dull with a little patchy rain. Morning looks mostly dry and quite sunny. East Anglia and the South East can expect a lot of cloud and a few drizzly outbreaks. Well, Sky News at 11 is next. Our press preview continues. The final countdown. Party leaders ramp up the campaigning in the last few days ahead of the election.